They say love don't always knock loud. Sometimes it slips in quiet and stays longer than you meant it to. Hey, I'm Alex LeMan. These stories, they're about that kind of love. The kind that leaves a mark even after the door's closed. Love that's tender, tangled, and true, a little messy, a little magic. Some of it heals, some of it haunts, but all of it real. So settle in and let your heart listen. Cane of Hidden Love. Chapter 1. Cane on Jefferson Street. A siren wailed somewhere far off and faded, but the crack of a paper cup against concrete snapped Yvonne back to the moment. Hot coffee splashed across the sidewalk in a wild arc of brown, steam rising into the sticky Birmingham air. She didn't care about the burn on her wrist. Her eyes were locked on the scene across Jefferson Street, where two teenagers shoved an older man off balance. His metal cane clattered away, ringing like a church bell at dawn. One boy laughed, the other grabbed the man's frayed backpack, then they both bolted, sneakers slapping asphalt in a frantic rhythm. Traffic kept crawling. A city bus hissed by, riders staring but unmoved. Behind Yvonne, the neon open sign of Little Mama's Cafe flickered, casting red light over an empty lunch counter. Her break was gone, rent was overdue, and the diner's register had shown $23 all morning. Yet she ran. "Sir, hold on." She knelt beside him. The man's breathing sounded like torn paper. His dark palms trembled as he tried to push himself upright. Rain from the night before had pooled in broken pavement. Muddy water seeped into his khaki cuffs. He studied her face, wary, as if kindness were a trick. "I've had worse," he whispered, voice rough and low. Yvonne caught the metallic scent of blood. A thin cut striped his cheekbone. She tugged the cotton kerchief from her own hair and pressed it to the wound. "I'm Yvonne Henry," she said, because names could make strangers less lonely. "Let me get you someplace dry." He flinched but nodded. "Amos," he offered, barely louder than the hum of a streetlight about to die. The cane lay in a puddle a few feet away. She retrieved it, wiped it on her jeans, and handed it back. His right knee buckled when he tried to stand. She braced her shoulder under his arm, feeling the brittle bones beneath his jacket. A gust of humid wind carried magnolia petals along the gutter, little white sails drifting toward the storm drain. Inside the cafe, the air smelled of frying catfish and yesterday's grease. Fluorescent bulbs buzzed overhead, one flickering like a nervous heartbeat. Amos lowered himself onto a corner stool, jaw clenched, gaze sliding around the room as though he expected the tiled walls to judge him. Yvonne poured him water, added a slice of lemon because it felt dignified. "Lunch is on me," she said. "I didn't ask," he murmured, eyes fixed on the tabletop. "You didn't have to." She plated grits, collard greens, and a piece of cornbread still warm from the oven. As she placed it in front of him, she saw her reflection in the chrome napkin holder, sweat-slick curls, cocoa-brown eyes rimmed with worry. A woman trying to be brave. Amos tasted the grits as if they might vanish. When he met her eyes, something shifted, gratitude, but laced with disbelief. "Why?" "Because no one helped when I fell last year," she said before she could stop herself. The memory flashed. A slippery diner floor, fractured wrist, customers staring, manager yelling about liability. And because nobody should bleed alone. Rain began again, tapping the windows. Buses groaned past, headlights smearing gold on wet glass. Time thinned, only the sound of Amos's spoon scraping the plate remained. He ate slowly, savoring each bite like a secret. When the bell over the door jingled and another customer wandered in, Yvonne hurried to serve him, but her thoughts stayed on the stranger at the counter. His shoulders slumped yet held a peculiar poise, as if he had once worn tailored suits. Beneath the patches on his coat sleeve she glimpsed a watch tan. No watch now, only the ghost of one. Scars crossed his knuckles, old and pale. The lunch rush never happened. By 2 o'clock the cafe was empty again. Amos folded the napkin with almost ceremonial care and set it beside the clean plate. "Miss Yvonne," he said, pronouncing her name like a hymn, "you saved more than my meal." He reached into his pocket, produced a single silver dollar, and pushed it toward her. She shook her head. "Keep it. Come back tomorrow. I'll have sweet potato pie." A faint smile tugged at his cracked lips, the first flicker of dawn on a long night sky. He gripped the cane, rose carefully, and limped toward the door. Wind chimes over the entrance sang a trembling chord as he left. Yvonne watched him navigate the puddles outside, cane tapping steady like an ailing metronome. A strange warmth fluttered in her chest. Hope, maybe, or the beginning of something she couldn't yet name. The street swallowed him, traffic masking his footsteps, but the quiet within her felt louder than the city's roar. She didn't see the sleek sedan idling half a block down, dark windows reflecting storm clouds. Inside, a pair of eyes tracked every move the old man made, then shifted to Yvonne behind the glass. The engine purred, headlights flashed once, and the car eased away into the rain. Yvonne never noticed. She was busy wiping the counter, humming an old gospel tune her grandmother had loved, unaware that her life had just stepped onto a path lined with roses and thorns. Outside, thunder rolled like distant drums, promising change. Chapter 2. A Name. Without a past. Morning storms drifted out over the Red Mountain Ridge, leaving Birmingham draped in pearly mist that clung to street lamps like silk. At dawn, Yvonne unlocked the diner, her fingers numb from sleepless worry. Bills crowded her purse, yet her mind kept circling the man with the cane and the look in his eyes when he tasted kindness. The bell above the door rang as she switched on the lights, chasing shadows into corners. She set 2 cups on the counter instead of 1. Maybe Hope had a ritual. At 6:30, Amos arrived, early sun painting a weak halo on his shoulders. He leaned on the cane more heavily than the day before, rainwater darkening the hem of his coat. When he spotted the second cup, the tight lines around his mouth eased. He sat with a graceful bow of his head, as though he once knew ballroom floors. Yvonne poured coffee, thick as river mud, and slid a plate of cinnamon waffles across to him. He stared at the steam for a moment. "I used to love mornings," he murmured. The words felt like a window cracked open. Yvonne inhaled the chill breeze of mystery. She wanted to ask how someone used to love mornings, what had broken that habit, but she saw a wall in his posture, built high and silent. So she shared her own cracks instead. "My daddy played trumpet at Starlight Lounge," she said softly. "On Sundays he'd whistle Duke Ellington till Mama's cornbread came out the oven." She smiled at the memory. "That sound is why I still show up here, even when I'm tired of the world looking the other way." Amos folded his hands. The flicker of the overhead bulb etched shadows on the scars across his knuckles. "Music can build a bridge," he said, "even over fire." Fire. The word struck like flint, but he offered no spark of explanation. Yvonne's breath caught with questions she dared not voice. She touched his arm gently instead. His flinch was slight, but told her he had forgotten gentle touches. Outside, the city shook off its drowsiness. Church bells tolled 7. Commuters hurried by the plate-glass window, unaware that inside 2 strangers rehearsed an unspoken confession. Amos ate in small measured bites, as if time itself were rationed. Mid-morning brought a lull. A shaft of sunlight slipped past the blinds, turning dust into floating gold. Yvonne retrieved a composition book from beneath the counter and tore out a clean page. "I don't like calling you Mr. with no last name," she said. "Tell me what to write on this. Full name, so I can pray right when I thank God you're still breathing." He tensed, corners of his eyes tightening as though the request pried open a locked door. For one heartbeat she thought he would leave. Instead, he drew a shaky breath and whispered, almost inaudible, "Write Amos Lane." She wrote slowly. The pen seemed to tremble on its own. "Lane like the street?" He gave a weary half-shrug. "Lane like a road that ends." The answer chilled her more than the air conditioning. She sensed a veil of sorrow behind that surname, an alley of memories he no longer dared to walk. Before she could probe, the door burst open. A gray-suited stranger stepped in, power clinging to him like expensive cologne. He glanced at Amos, at the cane, at the waffle crumbs. His lips tightened. "Morning," Yvonne offered, voice steady. The man ordered pecan pie but never tasted it, eyes flicking toward Amos each time the fork hovered near his mouth. When he finally paid, he left a $100 bill beneath the plate and a business card atop the money. Carter Wealth Advisory, Atlanta. As the bell jingled, Yvonne noticed small print on the back, an address in Birmingham's historic banking district. Amos's hand trembled when he reached for the card. He slipped it into his pocket without a word, but his eyes clouded as if ghosts had gathered. Yvonne felt an ache bloom in her chest, half empathy, half fear. "Do you know him?" she asked. "One of many who used to," he said, tone flat. His gaze drifted to the window, to a sky now bright and pitiless. Past has a habit of catching up, especially when you run too far. Yvonne swallowed hard. She remembered her own fleeing, from broken hearts, from hospital bills, from the echo of her father's trumpet after his stroke stole the music. Maybe every soul carried a secret chase. Lunch rush arrived like a wave. Workers craving chicken sandwiches, teenagers giggling over milkshakes. Yet, between orders, Yvonne kept returning to the man at the corner stool. Amos spoke little, but each silence felt charged, as though fate were tuning strings for a song only they could hear. At 2:30, he pushed back his plate, thanked her in a voice husky with unspent emotion, and rose carefully. His cane tapped once, twice, marking beats in a hidden symphony. Then he paused. "You gave me a name today," he said. "Now let me give you something." He reached inside his coat and produced a wrinkled Polaroid. It showed a younger Amos in a charcoal suit beside a laughing woman in a sequined dress, both standing under a marquee that read, "Harlem Jazz Benefit." Hope glimmered in the old photograph like sunrise on water. "My wife," he said, "before the ash." He handed Yvonne the picture. "Keep it safe. Memories survive best with gentle hands." Yvonne cradled the photo as though it might dissolve. Questions raged inside her. Ash? Harlem? Benefit? But she honored the fragility of gift and simply nodded. Amos dipped his head, pushed open the door, and vanished into sunlight that painted the sidewalk pure white. She locked the image in the register drawer, heart thrumming like brushed cymbals. Outside, cicadas sang. Their chorus warning summer had stories left to tell. Yvonne sensed new chapters gathering. A wealthy stranger circling, a past aflame, and her own life balancing on the thin edge of trust. When evening shadows lengthened, she closed the diner, but Amos's name echoed in her mind with the weight of prophecy. Lane like a road that ends, she thought. Yet perhaps endings were just bends a traveler couldn't see beyond. She tucked the Polaroid inside her coat, stepped into the dusky heat, and hoped tomorrow would bring answers, or at least the courage to keep asking. Chapter 3. The Envelope. Cicadas buzzed like fevered violins while a storm brooded beyond the valley, sheets of cloud blotting out the last streaks of sunset. Yvonne locked the diner, pulled her denim jacket tight, and stepped onto Jefferson Street. Grease still clung to her skin, but beneath it fluttered something sweeter. The memory of Amos's faint smile when she'd slipped extra honey butter onto his waffle. She replayed that moment as she crossed the courtyard of her aging apartment complex, passing cracked flower pots and a porch swing that moaned in the wind with every push of empty air. A square of cream-colored paper lay on her welcome mat, stark against peeling green paint. No mailbox thud had sounded, no footsteps echoed down the corridor, just the hush of threat and promise. She crouched, noticing thick parchment, edges trimmed in silver. On the front, her name curled in black ink, letters elegant and unfamiliar. Her pulse quickened. Eviction notices came on cheap copy paper. This felt heavier, more deliberate, like an invitation to a world that usually pretended she didn't exist. Inside her apartment, the lone lamp cast amber pools across thrift store furniture. She slit the envelope with a butter knife, heart hammering a tempo older than gospel. One slip of paper slid out, folded twice. It carried only 12 words, centered and precise. Come to Glenwood Inn, room 214. 7 p.m. tonight. Come alone, no signature, no hint. 7 p.m. was less than an hour away. Thunder cracked somewhere east, rattling the window panes. For a breath, she imagined Amos penning those words, back straight despite the cane, eyes solemn yet hopeful. But why a hotel? Why secrecy? She pictured the gray-suited man from Atlanta, the way his gaze had sliced through Amos and lingered on her as though calculating a price. The thought chilled her. She walked to the kitchenette, poured a glass of tap water, and stared at the Polaroid Amos had given her, now propped against a chipped mug. The woman in sequins laughed forever in frozen time. Amos, younger and unscarred, watched her with adoration so raw that Yvonne's throat tightened. If room 214 held answers, about fire, about loss, about why a wealthy stranger cared who fed a man on the street, she needed them. Decision arrived like lightning, sudden, unforgiving. She stripped off her coffee-stained blouse, pulled on her mother's ivory one, and zipped dark slacks that hugged her hips even after 1,000 washes. She dabbed cocoa butter on her wrists, smoothed stray curls, and whispered a prayer her grandmother used to sing. Lord, guide my feet while I run this race. Outside, rain began its soft percussion on tin gutters. She grabbed the envelope, the Polaroid, and her umbrella, then locked the door behind her. The city bus exhaled diesel as she boarded, lights flickering over empty vinyl seats. Birmingham's nightscape blurred past. Neon pawn shops, closed beauty salons, the barbecue joint still glowing red beneath a mural of Mahalia Jackson. Each turn of the wheels beat time with her thoughts. What if Amos was in danger? What if she was? She slid a hand into her pocket, touching the smooth paper like a talisman. A teenage couple in matching hoodies argued softly 3 rows back. Their whispered fears about rent and relatives echoed her own battles. Yet hope nudged her chest every time she envisioned Amos's fragile dignity. Maybe the letter was his way to repay her in a language richer than coins. 20 minutes later, the bus hissed at the corner of Magnolia and Fifth. Glenwood Inn loomed across the street. 4 stories of restored brick and stained glass transoms, glowing cobalt beneath rain-washed streetlights. Honeysuckle vines crept along wrought iron fences, releasing perfume that mixed with petrichor until the night smelled like memories after a church revival. A valet under a crimson awning tracked her approach. Curiosity flickering in his eyes, but he said nothing when she slipped past. Marble tiles gleamed beneath her footsteps in the lobby, reflecting chandeliers that dripped crystals like captured rain. Jazz drifted from hidden speakers, a slow trumpet riff that conjured her father's long-ago solos. She followed the music to the elevator, palms damp. As the doors closed, her reflection stared back. Wide eyes, soft brown skin, courage trying on its Sunday best. Second floor. The corridor stretched quiet, carpet the shade of midnight velvet. Golden numbers shone on polished mahogany doors. At 214 she paused. The silence felt thick, almost reverent, broken only by the faint hum of air vents and her own heartbeat drumming in her ears. She imagined opening the door to find Amos sitting upright, Cain abandoned, ready to reveal the mysteries stitched into his scars. But another image flickered. The Atlanta man leaning back in a leather chair, contract in hand, eyes cold. She couldn't predict which truth awaited. Yvonne rested her fingertips on the doorframe. The paper crinkled in her fist, its message now a living thing between her and whatever lay beyond. She inhaled, tasting honeysuckle and fear, then lifted her hand to knock, hesitating at the final fraction of an inch where choice still existed. The hall lights dimmed slightly as a cloud slid over the moon, and in that slender gloom she heard her father's trumpet again, urging her forward. She let the knuckles fall. The sound echoed down the empty corridor like a promise that some stories refuse to stay silent. Chapter 4. The Truth Behind the Cane. The door eased open without a sound, as if expecting her. A single lamp glowed beside the window, painting the room in shades of caramel and shadow. Rain tapped the glass like impatient fingers, while thunder rolled far enough away to feel mythical. In the hush, Yvonne saw him, Amos, seated in an armchair of burgundy velvet, Cain balanced across his knees. Yet everything about him felt altered, sharpened, awake. Freshly pressed slacks replaced ragged khakis. A slate blue dress shirt framed a posture no longer stooped. Only the thin scar across his cheek remained, a muted signature of past hurt. He stood, slowly, carefully, but fully, without leaning on the cane. Yvonne's breath caught. She remembered that first afternoon when his leg trembled beneath weight. Now his shoulders squared like a man stepping into a boardroom. Still, his eyes, dark as Mississippi soil after rain, held the same quiet ache. "Mr. Lane," she said, voice small in the wide room. He gestured to a second armchair. "Please call me Marcus." The name vibrated in her chest, awakening distant headlines. Langston Capital, jazz charity galas, a tech merger that once brightened Birmingham's skyline. Images clicked into place. Press photos of a brilliant CEO who vanished after tragedy. She pressed trembling fingers to her lips. "Marcus Langston," she whispered. He nodded, a confession in a single dip of his chin. "I needed to meet you outside that name." She sank into the chair, heartbeat pounding louder than the rain. "Why me?" Marcus studied the cane before speaking, thumb grazing the polished wood as though it held every chapter of his life. "The night my wife died, I was supposed to be backstage announcing funds for Harlem's after-school jazz program." His voice cracked, but he steadied it. "A faulty space heater ignited our townhouse instead. Flames took her, took the music, took my faith in people who flock to wealth like moths to porchlight." He exhaled, shoulders deflating. "So I went searching, disguised in the one thing folks avoid, poverty. No chauffeur, no boardroom polish, no safety net, just a cane and the street's cruel honesty." His eyes lifted to hers. Months passed before anyone looked at me with more than pity or fear. Then you came running across Jefferson Street, coffee still steaming off your skin. Yvonne felt tears rise. She pictured him sprawled on concrete, teenagers laughing, and shame flooded her, shame for a city that looked away. Yet hope braided through too, the power of a single impulse to help. Marcus walked a slow circle, testing strength in his leg. "The cane started as necessity," he said. "I ruptured a ligament escaping the fire. Eventually the injury healed, but I kept the cane as a reminder of fragility, and as camouflage. People see a man leaning on wood and assume weakness. They speak their truest tongues when convinced no gain is possible." Lightning flared, illuminating lines of longing in his face. Then Carter Simmons, the man in gray, recognized me. He served on my company's board before I disappeared. He tracked me down, hoping to drag me back into headlines. I feared you'd be pulled into his greed. Yvonne's chest tightened. "That envelope, was it from him?" "No," Marcus said gently. "It was from me. I needed to explain before rumors reached you." He stepped closer, voice softer than the candle smoke. "You deserve the truth because you gave without conditions." Silence swelled between them, thick, luminous. She sensed the air shifting as if the room itself leaned in to listen. Her mind catalogued doubts, his deception, the theater of poverty, but her heart resonated with his grief, a chord struck in the dark. "You lost more than a wife that night," she said. "You lost the music inside you." Marcus's eyes glistened. He knelt, not in supplication but in shared mourning. "And you, Yvonne Henry, reminded me that music still plays in kind acts and honey butter." A tentative smile touched his lips. "I found a gospel riff in your laugh, a trumpet solo in your stubborn faith." A warmth bloomed in her, fragile yet fierce. She reached out, fingertips brushing the scar that fire left behind. Thunder growled like distant drums, but within the room an intimate hush settled, two hearts measuring one beat. He rose and crossed to a small table where a leather folder waited. Opening it, he revealed documents, deeds, licensing papers, a business plan stamped with the diner's address. "I want to renovate Little Mama's into a community bistro," he said, voice steady yet brimming with anticipation. "A place where single mothers find work, where kids hear live jazz while doing homework, where elders eat free on Sundays. I can finance it, but only if you agree to run it. Not because you owe me, but because the city needs what already burns in you." Yvonne stared at the papers, then at the cane resting against the chair, no longer a symbol of defeat, but of choice. The rain eased, leaving a hush broken by the gentle creak of the hotel's old wood. She heard the trumpet of her father in that silence, and realized Marcus was offering more than bricks and menus. He was offering resurrection for both of them. She stood, spine straight as a hymn, and slipped the Polaroid from her pocket. Holding it between them, she whispered, "Let's honor her laugh in every note we serve." Marcus placed his hand over hers, the photograph warm between their palms. Outside, the last cloud split to reveal a slice of moonlight that poured through the window, silvering the cane and stitching their shadows into one. In that glow, they found the beginning of a new melody, composed from ash, honey, and the steady cadence of renewed belief. Chapter 5. A Key and a Door. The dawn after the hotel meeting arrived painted in liquid gold, yet Yvonne woke as if a cold river ran beneath her skin. Doubt whispered, "A community bistro run by a waitress drowning in late fees?" She half expected the promise to evaporate with the night's storm. But at 8 sharp, a vintage emerald green Cadillac rolled to the curb outside her apartment. white wall tires gleaming like fresh pearls against asphalt. Marcus stepped out in a charcoal overcoat, Kane forgotten on the back seat, and raised a hand in greeting that felt more like destiny calling. They drove across Birmingham, past murals of jazz legends and boarded-up textile mills, windows down so morning air filled the car with the scent of rain-washed magnolias. Marcus spoke little, yet uncertainty throbbed in his tightening grip on the steering wheel. Yvonne watched the city blur, her reflection faint in the chrome side mirror. Could she lead a place that might heal others when her own heart still carried bruises? 20 minutes later, they turned onto a side street no GPS would favor. Booker Street, an avenue of shuttered storefronts and sagging power lines. At the corner stood a red brick building 3 stories tall, its facade mottled by decades of Alabama heat. Faded letters above the entrance read Pearl Theater, ghosts of a segregated cinema that closed before she was born. Broken posters still clung to glass boxes flanking the doors, edges curling like forgotten prayers. Marcus parked. "This is it," he said, voice part excitement, part apology. Yvonne felt her hope wobble. She had pictured polished counters and stainless steel kitchens, not busted neon and a roofline teetering like an old hymn on its last note. He produced a small brass key on a velvet ribbon, placed it in her palm, and closed her fingers over it. "If we build beauty here, it will echo down every block." They stepped inside. Dust rose in lazy spirals through slats of light piercing the boarded windows. Rows of velvet seats decayed in crooked lines. A tattered screen drooped like a weary curtain. But the space breathed history. Trumpet solos, first dates, laughter muffled by segregation's cruel divide. Yvonne's pulse quickened, sensing stories sewn into the walls. "Renovations start next week," Marcus said, voice reverent. "I already secured local contractors. We'll keep the marquee. Its glow will call folks home." He climbed onto the stage where footlights rusted under cobwebs. Picture open mic jazz on Fridays, gospel brunch on Sundays, free tutoring in the balcony rooms. His words painted color across decay, and she saw it too. Brass instruments flashing, laughter lifting ceilings, children safe beneath melodies. A sudden crash shattered the vision. The front doors swung wide, admitting Carter Simmons in a razor-cut suit, flanked by 2 lawyers. His smile was all calculation. "Marcus, we need to talk, brother," he called, voice echoing off plaster. "The board wants you back. And if you insist on pouring millions into a money sink, at least do it under the company banner." Marcus stiffened, jaw tight. Yvonne stepped forward, surprising herself. "This isn't for shareholders," she said. "It's for Jefferson Street, for kids who think hope shuts at dusk." Carter's stare flicked to her shoes, her thrift shop blouse, then lingered on the tarnished auditorium. "Admirable sentiment," he said, "but sentiment doesn't pay electricians." He produced a blue folder. "We buy the property tonight, restore it as luxury condos. You pocket profit, community gets—" "Displacement," Yvonne finished, fire sparking in her chest. Another promise broken. The air thickened. Marcus's silence felt like a held cord awaiting resolution. Yvonne's heart pounded. Here lay her first test as partner. Maybe something deeper. She reached into her purse, withdrew the Polaroid of Marcus and his late wife, and held it up so Carter saw the joy money couldn't counterfeit. "His legacy won't be condos," she said quietly. Marcus's shoulders eased. Grateful light warmed his gaze. He turned to Carter. "Take the offer back to the board. Tell them I finally remembered who I am." Carter's lips tightened, but the resolve between Marcus and Yvonne forged an iron door he couldn't push through. He spun on his heel, lawyers echoing him like punctuation, and exited into harsh sunlight. When the slam faded, dust settled around them in shimmering motes. Marcus walked off the stage and touched the edge of Yvonne's hand, still clutching the key. "I almost surrendered," he admitted. "Greed is a fluent language. I spoke it for years." Yvonne met his eyes, surprise melting into understanding. "Then, let's learn a new language together." She unlocked the side door leading to backstage corridors. Rust shrieked, but beyond waited an open courtyard drowned in morning light, honeysuckle vines creeping along cracked brick. Marcus inhaled, and a smile, unburdened, almost boyish, bloomed across his face. She felt an answering warmth bloom in her chest. Not romance yet, something gentler, clay being shaped by patient hands. Still, her pulse hitched when his fingers brushed hers while steadying the door, and she wondered if ashes could feed not only community dreams, but tender ones of their own. They wandered the courtyard, planning herb gardens for fresh seasoning, chalkboards for children's poems. Each idea wove a net beneath her fear. Before leaving, Marcus took a marker from his pocket and scrawled across the cracked screen inside, "Opening soon. Home." Yvonne laughed, a sound that echoed like tambourines through ruined seats. Outside, the sky cleared into high cobalt. Marcus locked the theater, then pressed the key back into her palm. His smile carried trust and challenge in equal measure. "Keys belong to those who dare open doors," he said. She slipped the brass into her pocket, feeling its weight anchor a new identity. As they walked down Booker Street toward the Cadillac, cicadas struck up their summer anthem and, for the first time in years, Birmingham's heat felt like a welcome embrace instead of a burden. Chapter 6. Full Circle. Summer melted into a September evening glazed with amber light, the kind of hush that falls on Birmingham when cicadas finish their song, and the street lamps have not yet blinked awake. The marquee of the restored Pearl Theater blazed with new letters. Jefferson Soul Bistro. Grand Opening. Neon blues and golds pulsed like a trumpet solo skyward, casting color over neighbors gathered in their Sunday best even though it was Friday. Children pressed noses to the glass doors, catching the scent of smoked cumin and brown sugar glaze drifting from the kitchen. They gasped at the sight of tables carved from reclaimed church pews, each crowned with mason jar candles that flickered like captive fireflies. Inside, Yvonne stood near the host podium, palms damp despite the cool air. Her hair curled in soft spirals beneath a head wrap patterned with midnight lilies. The brass key Marcus had given her now hung on a silver chain against her heart, warm with every heartbeat. Across the dining room, Marcus greeted volunteers, his laughter rolling smooth as bass notes. Weeks of rehab had given him back an easy stride. The cane leaned forgotten against a coat rack, jeweled with children's stickers because they said even heroes need armor. At 6 on the dot, the band struck its first chord, an old Duke Ellington tune blooming beneath the Art Deco ceiling Marcus insisted on saving. Trumpet, upright bass, and brushed snare entwined until conversations hushed, as if the walls themselves held their breath. Yvonne watched elders sway, closed eyes glistening with memories of dances held in segregated halls that smelled of talcum and defiance. Here, now, the same elders dined beside college students and day laborers, no velvet rope in sight, only rhythm binding strangers. The first plate left the pass. Catfish over collards with corn cha-cha, and Yvonne's nerves eased. Staff she had trained from the neighborhood moved in a graceful choreography, aprons crisp, smiles wide. A teenager she once caught shoplifting now poured water with delicate care. A widow who had cooked for 5 children alone called out table numbers like gospel affirmations. Each face told its own redemption story. Near 8 o'clock, Carter Simmons slipped through the door, alone, suit jacket draped more humbly than before. He paused, gaze sweeping the vibrant room. Marcus noticed him, tension flickering in the set of his shoulders. Yet, when Carter stepped forward, he extended not a contract but a donation envelope for the bistro's tutoring program. "Turns out goodwill raises property values too," he murmured, half joke, half apology. Marcus accepted the envelope, surprise softening to gratitude. Yvonne, passing with a tray of peach tea spritzers, caught Carter's eye. For a fleeting second she thought she saw shame give birth to respect. A small miracle, but miracles were the night's main course. Just before closing, rain began to fall, soft as brushed cymbals. Yvonne slipped out a side door into the courtyard garden, where herbs shimmered silver under string lights. She inhaled basil and wet clay, heart swollen with something brittle and sweet. Footsteps approached. Marcus joined her, umbrella dangling unused at his side. "The roof didn't cave," he said, voice hushed by the rain. "Not yet," she teased, but emotion cracked her laugh. "They filled every seat, Marcus." He looked up at the glowing marquee. "You did that." "We did," she corrected, turning to him fully. Moonlight edged the scar on his cheek like a ribbon of porcelain. Yet in his eyes she saw the gentle fire his wife once kindled, reborn, redirected. Her chest tightened with tenderness, tinged by caution. Love, after ruin, felt like stepping barefoot on unfamiliar sandbars. Marcus reached into his pocket and produced the old wooden cane, now polished and engraved with the bistro's name. "A souvenir," he said, "to remind me where grief carried me and where kindness carried me back." He laid the cane against the garden bench and took her hands. Rain stitched cool threads over their knuckles. "Yvonne," he began, then faltered, as if the next words might alter the very weather. She waited, pulse storming beneath her skin. "I don't know the tempo of tomorrow, but I want its melody beside yours." Her breath hitched. Fear and hope collided, scattering sparks. She remembered nights counting tips, mornings spooning grits for a stranger no one else saw. She squeezed his hands. "Then let's write it measure by measure," she said, voice steady as a drumline. A child's laughter floated through an open window as the band slid into a slow, lilting ballad. Marcus drew Yvonne close. They swayed among basil leaves and descending droplets. Two souls who had walked through fire and hunger to find not just restoration, but resonance. Around them, thunder rumbled distantly like applause, and the lights of Jefferson's Soul Bistro glowed brighter against the dark. A promise to every passerby that compassion, once given, always finds its way home.